Hi everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to the Cosmic Calendar. We're going to be looking at the energies and kind of transits of the period between around about the 13th to the 28th or so of July. And that's because we have another new moon at the end of the month, much like we've had since April. So we're going to have a look at the astrology transits of the next 2 weeks of the waning moon cycle. So this is for the super moon in Capricorn that happens on the 13th or so of July. So let's dive in and see what we've got to look forward to between now and then. So switching over to our calendar, we can see the full moon happening here on the 13th or so of July, and we can see that on the same day we have a wonderful trine between transiting Venus and Saturn, and this is a really lovely combination. It's really great for kind of solidifying sort of arrangements for commitments, for proposals, romantic proposals, or just kind of taking your relationship to the next level on some level. So it can be about commitment. Equally, it could be about kind of stabilizing. So if you've been through a difficult period, either with money or to do with creativity, fashion, beauty, or relationships themselves, it could be a time where things sort of are a lot more kind of harmonious and stable, where things sort of balance out and they're not as volatile. So that's a nice one to kind of mark in the diary. The next day, however, Venus moves on to a square to Neptune, and that's less sort of pretty. That tends to be where we can have kind of blind spots, so we tend to wear rose-tinted specs and only want to see the best in people, who may be sort of deceiving us on some level, or kind of putting the wool over our eyes. So it can be that sort of classic, the charmer, the sort of like the love rat who sort of whispers sweet nothings into our ear, but actually has no intention of sort of like of delivering. So it could be a case of disappointments in love, but equally it can be about being deceived financially. So I would just be very, very careful not to sign contracts or kind of enter into major transactions or negotiations on the 14th, because there could be something about it, some aspect of it that is not 100% above board, shall we say. It could equally also be about slippery boundaries. So sometimes it can be about, say, for example, like breaches or leaks of some kind, and this could be of a bank. So like financial details kind of getting out there, or some kind of disappointment on some level, just something not necessarily being as great as we thought it was. So maybe going to a concert and sort of being a bit kind of me about it and thinking, well, that wasn't really, I was expecting better. It's that kind of a vibe. And coming so soon after this trine to Saturn, on the positive side, it means that Saturn can help to offset that, so it can help keep us realistic and practical, and to kind of push through anything that does sort of come up. But at the same time, it's just worth bearing that in mind, that we need to sort of have our wits about us, to be quite discerning, and to sort of ask questions rather than to sort of be too sort of accepting or gullible. And then on a more positive note, we've got a lovely sextile happening between Mercury and Uranus. This is really, it's great for aha moments. It's kind of quirky speeches, people saying memorable things. It can be about having a kind of experimental mindset where we sort of have breakthroughs because we're willing to think outside the box. Sometimes it can be about expression of radical or unusual viewpoints, but I would say, this is a sextile, so it's not necessarily going to be shocking, but it may be kind of like, you kind of go, I never thought about something like that, but now that you mention it, it's that kind of thing. It's also great for anything technical, so if you need to problem solve, this is a fabulous day to do so. And just generally speaking, it's about kind of inventiveness and breakthroughs and sort of kind of novelty-seeking mindsets. So, wanting to sort of innovate, that kind of thing. And then we come to the weekend, and we've got a conjunction between the Sun and Mercury. And of course, this is when the Mercury will be Cazimi, will be sort of at around about 8:30 BST in the evening. So that's kind of great. But obviously, as Mercury enters into 8 degrees orb on either side of that, it will be combust. So that's just worth sort of bearing in mind. But yes, generally speaking, it is sort of great for communicating, writing, asserting yourself with clarity, and also speaking to power. Like, it's truth to power, but it's also about favor from higher ups or kind of authority figures, that kind of thing. So that's on Saturday. Then we move to Sunday the 17th, and we've got two wonderful trines between obviously the Sun and Mercury, which have just had their conjunction with Neptune. And this is quite magical, actually. It could be a time of really sort of great spiritual awakening, of realizations, of artistic inspiration. It could also be where we have really sort of clear sort of intuitive hits that are very, very accurate. We could have very vivid dreams at this time, prophetic dreams. So I would definitely keep a dream journal, and also an appreciation of things like subtleties of beauty, anything to do with Neptune, which does tend to be about the higher kind of vibrations of love. So we are talking here about more sort of compassion, love of humanity, as well as things like the arts and spirituality. So those are all the sort of more kind of positive kind of aspects of Neptune. But it is just worth remembering that Neptune is retrograde, so this will tend to be more of an internal experience, I would have thought, than necessarily an outward one. It may just be that, somebody could catalyze in us a sort of a realization, or we could say go and watch a film and have this amazing sort of like aha moment of like, oh my God, like I now see something else in a completely different light because of the symbolism, that it kind of makes something click, something like that. But it's often a very transcendent experience. We can feel very in kind of tune with everything else and part of the sort of the web of life in a very like peace and love kind of way, if you like. And then Monday the 18th, we might kind of come down to earth with a bump with this opposition between Mercury and Pluto. So again, Pluto intruding a little bit on that energy from Neptune. And so Pluto here can sometimes lead to sort of passive-aggressive behavior, paranoia. We can overthink things and start becoming very suspicious of other people. It can make us sort of get into those kind of stinking thinking where we sort of have very intense mental sort of loops. Equally, it can be about people trying to sort of manipulate us, often through speech or through sort of like ideas, craftiness, or kind of plotting, so it could be that we sort of see in the newspaper, like leadership campaign groups or sort of interests kind of counter briefing against each other, that type of thing, releasing sort of like debriefing and sort of trying to catch people out with information that like dirt, essentially. And then interestingly, on the same day we also have the ingress of Venus into Cancer. So moving from that sort of very sociable, quite gregarious energy of Gemini into the more kind of homely Cancer. And this places more of an emphasis on family relationships, on kind of wanting to beautify the home. So you might decide to embark on some kind of home redecoration project, do some interior design, that kind of thing. It's also when we form strong emotional bonds within the confines of our own home or tribe, like our family, that kind of thing. So kind of bonding with housemates, hanging out with family, having dinner parties, kind of intimate dinner parties with kind of close friends, that kind of thing. And this will last for, around about a month to 6 weeks. So it's not a sort of an overnight thing, so you don't have to necessarily have your kind of dinner party, whatever it is, on Monday the 18th. But it can also manifest in terms of things like creativity and finances. Much will again depend on where Venus falls in your chart and where Cancer is in terms of your kind of house cusps. Then moving on to the 19th, and we have the ingress of Mercury into Leo. So it's interesting that we've got Venus and Mercury, the two stars, as I said, the planets that flank the Sun, kind of both ingressing into opposite, like not opposite signs, but the signs of the Sun and the Moon within sort of the span of a day of each other. So Mercury in Leo tends to be quite, what's the word? Not bombastic, but it's not afraid to toot its horn, and it's quite dramatic. So it can be a time when we are very enthusiastic, where we want to sort of like, it can be about self-promotion, for example. It's great for sort of like PR and that kind of thing, but it can also bring out our more playful, childlike qualities, because of course Leo is also the magical child, and that's worth bearing in mind. So it can work sort of either way. But generally speaking, we tend to be more confident in terms of self-expression. We also tend to dress or kind of wear things that are a lot more colourful than we might usually. And where we we don't mind necessarily being like in the public eye or get sort of in the spotlight on some kind of level. So, if you are normally shy, then it's probably quite a nice transit. And then moving on to the 20th, we have a slightly more sort of challenging aspect between the Sun and Pluto. So they will be opposing each other, and this can sometimes lead to, as I say, power struggles. I think it's a progression of the energy of that full moon in Capricorn, where we have that kind of mystic rectangle, and the Sun and the Moon are kind of opposite each other, and so is Pluto and Mercury. So I think this playing out gradually over the space of the 2 weeks of the waning moon cycle. But here we are talking about, traditionally in mundane astrology, we're talking about things like power struggles. So we could have, elimination with regards to, say, the leadership contest in the UK, to replace Boris Johnson. Somebody could fall out of the race now. But on a more personal level, as I say, it can be where we clash with authority, or where we have kind of like confrontations with other people that can be quite intense. I would just sort of, if you can, try to sort of watch things like anger, because they could really boil over into something quite ugly. And equally, just sort of watch any tendency to abuse power, or just sort of go, it doesn't really matter if we kind of break the rules on this occasion, because invariably with Pluto, you will kind of get caught out. So just something you might want to sort of bear in mind if you are thinking about kind of getting a little bit relaxed or relaxing the rules, that kind of thing. And then we move on to the 22nd, where the Sun will ingress into Leo. So this is the sort of Leo season, and of course this is a time of, this is the Sun entering its own sign. So this is really kind of expansive, optimistic, sunny, brave-hearted, courageous, playful energy, which I think epitomizes, certainly in the Northern Hemisphere, the kind of, the start of the July or the August summer holiday. So it's really about that kind of fun in the sun, of letting the creative juices flow, of kind of letting our hair down. It can be quite hedonistic, but equally it can be about leadership, artistry, and also playfulness, with that magical inner child. So yes, a kind of a month-long period where we sort of very much focused on the more external aspects of sort of ourselves in public life, if you like. Then on Saturday the 23rd, we have another nice aspect, actually, a trine between Mercury and Jupiter, the two planets associated with kind of learning and with beliefs and communication and travel. So this could be a time where you take a really enjoyable trip somewhere. It could be that you have a wonderful and insightful and really profound conversation with a teacher or somebody who acts as a teacher, where we give a really amazing speech. It's also associated with things like good judgment, with kind of what do you call it, big picture thinking, and also with coming up with really sort of good solutions to like social issues, where you really are able to think of a kind of win-win solutions to problems. Also fantastic for things like speculative thought, as I say, anything to do with philosophy, learning and teaching, and of course positive thinking. It's a really optimistic, upbeat, confident kind of energy, so really, really lovely. And then we move into the following week, where we have a square between the benefics, between Venus and Jupiter. So very often the squares, even though they are challenging, when they happen between the benefics, it tends to be less about sort of really difficult things happening to us, and it tends to be more about self-indulgence. So it's where we sort of overdo things, where we can become too hedonistic, where we overeat, we overspend, maybe where we sort of buy something that we end up never wearing, that really expensive sort of like pair of shoes that we somehow never wear. So it's important to sort of, I think, try and sort of exercise a little bit of self-discipline, resist the urge to sort of only think in terms of pleasure or escape, that kind of thing, and sort of also sort of keep a balance between enjoyment, pleasure, and our kind of personal responsibilities, if you like, and not go too big, like not go too large, if you like, because we could end up paying for it, either with our liver or just maybe embarrassing ourselves, that kind of thing. So just something to sort of bear in mind. And then the 26th, again, we have a slightly more challenging aspect between Mars and Mercury, a square. So this can be where we have those kind of knee-jerk reactions, or we speak before we think. So we could say something sort of tactless, a bit of motor mouth. We might get into arguments. We may only see problems and feel a little bit irritable instead of seeing that like the upside of things. It can often be associated with moaning, a lot of moaning. Something that we English are kind of known for. And then if you think about mundane astrology, it can be about like car breakdowns, mechanical breakdowns, tech problems. But generally speaking, it tends to be about, acting or thinking too quickly. So yes, just something to bear in mind if you are in a meeting like with management or or whatever. And then we move on to the 27th with a lovely trine between Chiron and Mercury. So again, a wonderful day for listening to your heart, for purifying your thoughts and body, and for having healing realizations, that kind of thing. So quite a chill sort of vibe going on there on the 27th. The 28th, a bit more jarring. Mercury then moves into a square with Uranus, and that can jangle our nerves a little bit. So we can feel anxious. We can feel a lot of mental tension or kind of bodily tension. It tends to sort of jangle our nerves, so our body can start to feel a little bit tense. We can get a little bit fixated or rigid in terms of our thinking, or just have those blips where we sort of we can't seem to move past something that's bothering us, or we become very reactive or kind of rebellious, and we sort of, we can sometimes be a little bit perverse in the way that we communicate with others, we want to be sort of contrarian all the time. So just something to bear in mind, because Jupiter will also be going retrograde on the same day, and obviously Jupiter is the beneficent. It does make us more kind of tolerant of kind of others, and more sort of optimistic and expansive. So the fact that it's now turning inward, it does mean that in terms of our interactions with others, that there may not be that sort of goodwill that there normally is. Maybe other people won't necessarily be as tolerant of kind of whinging, or sort of what they see as sort of like petulant teenagey type of behavior. If you sort of get onto a bit of a whinging streak. So just something to bear in mind, that people are likely to be less tolerant than they might otherwise be. And that's kind of it. As I say, we do move into a new moon on the same day, so I will obviously pick that up in my next forecast when we look at the new moon in Leo. So yeah, I hope that's been helpful, that you've noted down some good dates in there. Enjoy the summer holidays, and I'll catch you again in a couple of weeks.